All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ricky. So I know usually you guys just have me up here for the welcome and you have to listen to me for like 5 minutes. So today it's just going to be a little bit longer. So I'm just going to start off and I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, just a couple of things to get your mind kind of thinking about what this could be for you. So first question, if you could change one thing about your life, what would it be? Broad, big question, right? If there's one thing that you think about all the time and you just can't let go of it, what is that thing? That thing in your life that's always on the back of your mind that you wish you had, that you wish you did, that's something that you wish was different about your life. So maybe for you, that's your career, and that's the way that it's played out this far. Maybe it's the fact that you don't have a spouse yet or a significant other. Maybe you just thought you would be so much further along in your goals by now, and you're just not. Maybe you feel super overwhelmed or like consumed by finances. It's something that you cannot stop thinking about, and you just hold so tightly to it. Maybe you wish that your parenting looked lovely and put together as other parents that you see. Whatever that thing is, I just want you to hang on to it. I'm going to tell you my story. So growing up, from as young as I can remember, I was a dancer. So I went to dance. I really didn't like it at first. By the time I was 10 and 11, I loved it. It's the one thing I wanted to do. So I would go to dance 7 days a week, and then I would go to dance competitions on the weekends. So I would drive to Denver. I would spend 2 entire days competing and dancing, and just, it's insanity, right? And so at that young age, I remember just looking and being like, I am not as good as those girls. I would get in the car and I would bawl my eyes out, 10 years old, bawl my eyes out on the way home and say, Mom, I want to be as good as those girls. Like, I want to do that. And after probably like 2 years of me crying, I'm not kidding you, after every single competition and saying that, my mom was finally like, okay, like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to get you to that place? My mom was so encouraging about following your dreams, right? Like, what do we need to do to get you to that, to be that type of dancer, to be that type of person? And so for me in my life, it was to drive an hour to Denver and an hour back every day for dance classes. And so starting in 8th grade, that's what I did. I drove an hour to dance and an hour back at like 10 p.m. By the time I could drive, my mom didn't have to drive me anymore. I'm sure she was so happy about that. But it's the one thing I loved. It's the one thing that I loved to do. I kid you not, just to give you a little bit more kind of understanding of the way that I think about things further in life, right? So I became a lot better dancer, and I was dancing with those girls that I used to point at, and I would get in the car, and this was my conversation with my mom now. Mom, I don't understand why someone would play football and not want to be in the NFL. Like, why would you do that for fun? I don't get it. I can't understand it. Why would you do that? Like, if you're going to be in politics, you're either the president or don't do it at all, right? Like, that was truly my mindset. Even this morning, right, I'm walking past the park, and I'm like, these people are jogging. Like, why are they jogging? Don't they want to be in the Olympics? I don't get it. Obviously, I'm just kidding. I've finally like come to this place where I get it, right? I do things for fun. But really, until a few years ago, like, I did not understand, like, I didn't understand that not everyone had this same mindset. I was kind of like, you know, you're either all in or you're not. And I did not necessarily understand it until Eric was like, Brooke, I don't think like that. And I'm like, interesting, great, okay, so it's just me. And now in New York City, I do think there are a lot more people that have my mindset than not, but I'll stick with that. And so I ended up going to college for dance and then graduating. Awesome. And then I found myself living in New York City. Actually, my roommate was Caroline at the time, and we had some Airbnb guests. So some guests, some people usually were friends. They weren't really Airbnb guests. They were mostly like family friends who would come and help us pay our rent by staying in our extra room. And so at one point, I made friends with these 2 women that were staying with us, and every night they would just see me eat a fried egg for dinner, right? That's all I could afford. I was working 5 jobs, fried egg, that was my dinner. And I was trying to obviously be a dancer, pursue this dancing dream. And then, so one day I come home and I see a $20 bill on the counter, and it says, go get yourself some dinner. So obviously these poor ladies were like, this girl, she's struggling. And so in that point, right, I realized if this is what I'm going to do, if I'm going to be working 10 jobs and I'm going to be pursuing this dream and this goal, like, I know that has to be what God wants me to do, or else I don't want to do it, right? Like, if I'm going to be living my life like this, it better be what I'm called to do, and it better be something that God's actually telling me to do. And so for a while, right, I was super half in, half out, because I sort of had to be, because I have to make money, but I also have to do this. I was super half in, half out. And so I really did. I sat down one day and I said, okay, God, I need to hear from you. I need to hear from you right now, and I need to know whether or not this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so in that moment, I came face to face with God, and this is what he told me. It'll be up on the screen so you can kind of follow along. It's pretty short. It just says, immediately, they left their nets and they followed him. Immediately, they left the boat and followed him. Still gets me. And so obviously in that moment, right, that's so clear. You can't get past the fact that it says immediately, and you can't get past what God's telling me to do in this moment. It was so clear. And so if you know this story about immediately they left their nets and they followed him, immediately they left the boat and followed him, it's talking about the disciples. So God was speaking to the disciples in this instance. They were fishermen. Being fishermen, that's how they made their money. That's all they knew. That's who they were, right? And God's like, yeah, you know, like in some way you are fishermen, but to me you're so much more than that. And I was a dancer, and God said, yeah, but you're so much more than that. He said to me, let go of your dancing shoes and follow me. To you, what if that's like, let go of your perfect checklist of what you want your spouse to be, of how you're going to meet them, and follow me. Maybe it's just let go of your idea of financial success and follow me. Let go of your intricate plans and follow me. And so don't get me wrong, right? I'm not telling you that your plans are wrong or that dreams are bad or that having money is bad or that you won't be financially blessed. I'm just asking you the question that could God be asking you to release control of something today? Right, yeah. Could he have a better, more intricate, more beautiful plan for your life? And could you be so caught up in your own plan that you miss out on the purpose that God has for you, and that you miss out on the bigger picture? It reminds me of actually Ricky and Krista's story, which I feel like I can tell because I saw them go through it. Ricky's dream that God placed on his heart was to start a church in New York City, right? And so in 2013, they moved here. He got a job at a church. This was it, right? I'm going to be a pastor in New York City. It's happening. Lovely, amazing, right? And then a few years later, God said, okay, great, awesome. Now move to South Carolina. And I'm assuming in that moment, they were like, what? Right? Like, you laid this on my heart. This is the dream that you gave for me. And now you're asking me to do something completely different. It didn't follow along with their plans. It didn't follow along with what they thought that they needed to do. And yet, if they wouldn't have said yes and said, okay, I will do that, none of us would be sitting here today, right? God ended up bringing them back to the city with their own plans, with God's own plans in mind, not their plans. But it still ended up being what God said he would do. Another story that it reminds me of, which ends a little bit differently, is the story of the rich young ruler. So he was rich, he was young, and he was a ruler. That is all we know about him. And this is what God said to him. Jesus looked him hard in the eye and loved him. So don't miss that he loved him. This is why he's telling him to do this. He said, there's one thing left. So you're doing everything I'm asking you to do. There's one thing left. Go and sell whatever you own and give it to the poor. All your wealth will then be heavenly wealth, and come follow me. And then it says, the man's face clouded over. This is the last thing he expected to hear. And he walked off with a heavy heart. He was holding on too tight to a lot of things and not about to let go. And I think it's so easy for us to look at that and be like, oh, what a mistake, right? Like, what a mistake. Like, God's just saying, do this and then follow me, and I have so much for you. But really, like, I'll tell you, in the moment that God told me to stop dancing and follow him, my face clouded over, right? Like, that's how I felt. It's not necessarily going to be an awesome and joyous thing. But what I'll ask you is, will you release it? Or will you say, God, this is too much? Now, I want you to look at the two different stories that we've kind of talked about today. Think about the disciples, and then think about the rich young ruler. We don't know the rich young ruler's name. We know the disciples' name. And we actually know like their place in history because they said yes. We know that they got to go along on the journey with Jesus, to see him heal people, to see him like do everything that Jesus did. I mean, they changed the world the way we know it today because they said yes. And how could the rich young ruler's story have been different if he would have said yes? Would we have known his name? Would he have gotten to go along on that journey? We will never know. And so it kind of leads me to the second part of this, right? When God tells you to let go of something, it's not easy. When God said, set down your dancing shoes and follow me, I cried a lot. I cried to Eric, my husband. I cried to Krista. I cried to myself over and over again for a really long time. So it's not a joyous thing to hear, right? It was really incredible for me to hear from God so clearly. Like, I'll say, that's beautiful. That's amazing to say, God, this is what I need from you, and him to answer it as clearly as he did by telling me immediately what to do. That's beautiful, but that doesn't make it easy. And so I accepted it. Like I said, of course, right? Like there's a big obedient side to my heart that's like, I want to do everything that's right no matter what. So I said, sure, like totally, I'm going to listen. I'm going to do it. And so I did. But over time, saying yes, like I realized actually I kind of built up a wall between me and God, right? I did what he said, but I totally missed out on the second part that says, and follow me. I totally missed out on the part that's like, God wants me to be like a part of something. Instead, I was just like, sure, I quit dance, but what's next? Please give me something next. But really his next was just like, follow me, come with me, just love me, because he just wanted me. And so I realized like deep down, if I was really honest, I was sort of angry. And I think when you think of anger and you think of anger in God and anger in the church, you think, oh, she doesn't believe in God anymore because she's angry, or oh, she's gonna leave the church because she's angry. But it wasn't that type of anger, right? I love God, I believe in him, I believe he has the best for me, but that doesn't mean that I didn't feel angry sort of in the sense of just losing hope and kind of losing trust. I had built up this wall. And so I was kind of digging deeper into like the feelings of anger and what that actually means. And I read a study done by a psychologist that basically said a core hurt that underlies anger is feeling powerlessness. So there's the feeling of feeling powerless, the feeling of powerlessness. And so anger becomes your defense mechanism when you don't feel like you have any power. You just become angry because your power is gone. And so with that, I just want to say, like, sometimes faith can feel powerless, right? Because it's not your power anymore. You're saying, okay, God, I release like what I have and what I feel, and I want your power. I want your power in me. I want you to work through me. It's less about me. It's more about you. You are the power. So faith can feel powerless, but you have to understand that God can be trusted, right? Like that's the main thing that I want you to leave with today, is that God can be trusted. So when you feel powerless, he can be trusted because he has the power. He can be trusted. So look at the big picture, right? A nice kind of true telling way of how you know he can be trusted is to look at the disciples. When you see the disciples, he says, immediately they left their nets and followed him. It's easy to say, of course they did, look what was coming. Of course they did, look who they became, right? But I'm sure in that moment they were like, but this is all I know, this is all I am, and I'm just gonna follow this person into who knows what. How am I gonna make money? How am I gonna survive? How am I gonna live? But they are kind of like our proof that he can be trusted, right? You get to see their full picture, you get to see their full story, and you get to see kind of the beautiful, intricate world that they got to be a part of. And so, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that in the moment they knew that they were making the right decision, but I know that we can look back and say that it's true, and it's no different for you, right? If God's asking you to let go of something, you have to recognize before you do it that he can be trusted, or else you will start to feel a little bit angry. You'll be like, why did I leave this thing? If you forget the part that says, follow me. So just a couple of things to leave you with that is he's powerful, he can be trusted, and he wants us, right? So whatever that thing is that's holding on tightly to you and is in the way between you and God, that may be the thing that he's asking you to let go of, because he wants us. He doesn't want us in like all of this baggage. He just wants us. He wants us to let it go. And so along with that, just don't let the anger defeat you, right? So if you feel angry, like don't let that take over way too much. Let it go, because I'm telling you, he can be trusted. And what I'm not saying, right? I'm not saying I won't ever dance again. There's nothing wrong with dancing. I'm not saying that you won't find your spouse. Absolutely not. I'm not saying you won't be financially blessed. All I'm asking you to do is to step out into what God is asking you to do, because he can be trusted and he will not let you down. Whew, and so with that, I ask you, what is it that God might be asking you to let go of today? So it's going to go up on the screen. What could he be asking you to release control of? On your seat, you'll see there's a note card there. I just want you to pick it up, and I want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind, or that thing that's kind of been tugging at you this whole time I've been talking, right? What's that one thing that God might be asking you to release control of? I want you to write it down on that note card, and then eventually, when we're gonna play some music, I'm gonna have you come up here and actually drop it in this box, and I want it to be kind of a symbol of actually releasing control, right? You write it down, you come up here and you release control of it. Let it be the symbol of that. And already, right, this might already feel hard. It might feel challenging to write it down. And you might actually have to do this over and over again, right? It's not necessarily a one-time thing. It's a challenging thing that you might have to do many, many times. But this is your first step, right? Is to, number one, just say, yeah, it's something I need to let go of. And number two, say, here I am, I'm letting it go. And so take a second, write it down. We're gonna play some music, and I just want you to take some time to reflect on that. And then when you feel ready, don't feel like you have to run up here. You can drop it in there. If you feel like you wanna rip it up so no one else can read it, do it. I don't care. Just bring it up and do that. Thank you, guys.